Hello, beloveds. This is Lainie Love beaming in for our Power of Transformational Retreats series. And I am so thrilled to have Mellissae Lucia here today, the creatrix of the Oracle of Initiation. And we're going to have a juicy conversation, really beginning from a starting point, because both of us have this experience of transformational retreats really saving our lives, quite literally. Being in a place for me personally where I was completely disconnected from my body, completely didn't feel safe here on earth. I really was dissociating all the time. I didn't want to be here. I was literally on the edge of suicide. And it was in finding the home of spiritual retreat that truly brought me back to myself, that truly started to crack my heart back open, that truly started to remind me of who I was, of why I was here, of what I was meant for and what I was made of, because I had gotten so far off track of that. I had become soulless in a lot of ways, and I was devoid. I was living a life that was devoid of meaning and purpose. And so it was in the arms of spiritual retreat and really transformational retreat space, largely that began with my interfaith seminary, the training that I did for 2 years, and our retreats that we came together in every month, that held me in that remembrance, that held me in that journey of reawakening and remembering. And now that's why I love to hold space for others to remember and come home to themselves and really return to their true nature, their true essence. And so, that really has been such a signature of my journey. And it's one of the reasons that transformational retreats is the main medicine and magic that I really bring forward. And it's such a core anchor to my sacred work in the world. And we're going to be going a lot deeper into that on Friday during our Revolutionary Retreats free event. But for now, I would love to hear, beloved, about your journey and how retreats really saved your life in your own process of initiation.
Yeah, that's such a great question. How did they save your life? That 6-word memoir thing that was floating around for a while. I did one a decade ago, and it's creativity saved my soul every time. And so I feel like transformational retreats, that's another way of saying nurturing and holding and expanding your creativity. And so there was, of course, you and I could sit here for 6 days and talk about all these amazing stories and these journeys, but really in a nutshell, I feel like there's a combination on a spiritual journey of these times that you have your own work to do and your work with the land and the work with the spirits. And then there's also these times when you do that in community and with others, and that you take it to another level. And each time we move between those, it's like an infinity sign. There is growth, there is expansion, there is embodiment. And so for me, there was this really interesting combination of first being called after my husband died. That was the crossroads. A lot of times people will come to transformational retreats when things are falling apart or aren't working, or you're depressed, or you're anxious, or you have no sex drive, or whatever it is, that there's something that's happening where you're going, is this really all that my life is? And mine was fairly cataclysmic in losing this whole life and culture that I thought I was going to have. But out of that became this journey of returning to the land and to a level of listening and to a level of communion with the energies and with being able to understand subtlety and spiritual direction that was just blown through the roof with this combination of my journeys and then coming together in sacred community. And part of what I feel happened when the planet shut down with the pandemic was that people had a reevaluation time, but there was also this forced isolation that no one in our generations has ever experienced. And there became this clarity about this starvation for real relationship. It's like people had their people had their pods during this time. And a lot of feelings came up for people about not being part of pods or wanting to be, you know, it was like all, but the basis of it was this sense of belonging and this sense of purpose and this sense of like really being human together. And so transformational retreats and the journeys that I have gone on and that have brought like this, the Oracle of Initiation, the project that I created over 7 years, that project really was this weaving in and out of the solo journeys and then community coming and literally finding me and going, you belong to us. And I went, I do. I want to. And there were like, literally, I made a list before we got on. We don't have enough time to go through how many of those experiences happen, but there's some sort of alchemy that happens when you have this knowing and this calling to something. And it's not necessarily that it's comfortable, because there may be some anxiety or fear, because like, you know, it's never going to be the same again. But also there's this knowing that this is the liberation that you really need. So as I say, it's hard to not get into the stories, because the stories are very interesting. But overall, I feel at this time on the planet, there is something about coming back together in this space that's a time out of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a way that we can tap in and listen and learn to trust in ways that we've forgotten. That's absolutely essential to our survival. I mean, let me ask you this question. I mean, what do you feel like was, do you have a crossroads? I mean, you mentioned a little bit with the start of this, but do you have a crossroads where it was like, oh, this was my life before and this was my life after, around transformational retreats?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And, you know, in terms of, and I'll share that in a minute, but in terms of what you were just saying, you know, there's this way that transformational retreats take us to our evolutionary edges. They take us to that deeper place that we of becoming, that we're being called to, like the, you know, like the butterfly that starts as the goo in the chrysalis. And so it's this way that they really take us to those wild edges of self, of soul, of becoming, which is why I love them so much. And, you know, the other thing about it is when we gather, it creates these vortexes of power that amplifies our prayers, our intentions, our healing. It creates this acupuncture point on the earth that literally ripples out, that I think has deep healing, not only for the land that we are gathering upon to do the retreat container, to have that retreat container to hold us, but it ripples out beyond how like further than we will ever know and ever sense. And so I really love that about what you were sharing. And, you know, the retreat that was really a crux for me is really the retreat that sealed in my calling to support people in sparkling shamelessly in the world. And it was a Koya inspired movement retreat, which now I'm a Koya inspired teacher. That was the beginning of that journey for me about 9-10 years ago. And every time I would read the description of this retreat, I would start crying. It wasn't a profound description, but it was that call. I knew I had to go. I knew I had to be there on the land with this constellation of beings for this experience. And I went with that real question of, what is my sacred holy work to do here? What is my holy work to do here on earth? And I'd been hearing to support people in sparkling shamelessly. And I was like, what is this? I don't know. This sounds fluffy. And I was like, for 2 years. And I was like, okay, I'll take this as an inquiry. And while I was there, I got the very clear guidance to walk the labyrinth at dusk and at dawn, 2 consecutive days. It was about halfway through the retreat. And I went to the labyrinth. It was outdoors, and it was very mosquito-y because it was summertime, and I wrapped myself up and, you know, really made a prayer. Like, is it my sacred work to support people in sparkling shamelessly? And I went in with that sincere prayer, and I walked the labyrinth. And, you know, for me, my channel is very noisy, but it was silent. And I got to the center and I bent down in prostration and made an offering, again, silent. I was like, what's happening? And then I got the message, it's time to get up. And I was like, no, I didn't receive a message. And it was like, get up. And so I got up and I started walking out, and there was a firefly and another firefly and another firefly. And by the time I got out of the labyrinth, it was as if the whole night sky had literally dropped down. There was hundreds of thousands of fireflies all around me. And that was one of those, oh shit moments of like, okay, I'll fucking do it. Fine. I'll do it. You know, and it's like, those are the magical moments that can happen on retreat, that can happen in these, you know, ecstatic states that, like, you can't make this shit up, you know, like that was the biggest confirmation that I ever could have received. And, you know, it was deeply spirit guided, and it did change my life. It was the point where I said, okay, I'm going to do this, which was a huge commitment because it was a whole learning journey that I'm still on. There are these 13 sacred pillars of the sacred art of sparkling shamelessly that they're continuing to work me, and that I'm continuing to grow into. And it's like, it is my life's work, and it's massive. And it's like, right now I'm working on my legacy program to kind of like bring all that wisdom together. And it's a fascinating journey, right? But it's like, that transformational retreat did change my life, you know, and it did set me on the course. And Koya inspired movement happened to be that last alchemical piece for me as well, that allowed me to start leading retreats after that. So it was like my medicine bundle had all these different gifts, skills, and capacities. Then once Koya dropped in, it was the final glue that I needed to bring it all together, because it was that embodiment piece. And so, you know, we're going to be going into that in the Revolutionary Retreats event on Friday, like really supporting people in tuning into their own medicine bundle, because that's a key piece of it too. But yeah, that's my little journey. What about you? Did you have a turning point moment that was the, you know, oh shit, everything?
Well, and as you were talking, I just kept thinking, you can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. It was, there was actually a series of things that ended up happening, that all the constellation of concepts and people and beings and potentials and destinies that came together. Once again, I tend to track through the world. Is this almost statistically impossible what's happening sometimes? Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes that's some of the signs that you go, you can't deny them. You have to pay attention to them. And so there was this whole series of things that rolled out around horses. I was an adult. I was in my mid-30s when my husband died, and horses came in out of left field, didn't know they were coming. And then I ended up, through a spiritual teacher that I was working with, being invited to a horse dance ceremony. I didn't even know people did horse dance ceremonies. Out of that and some pivotal dreams ended up being this pilgrimage to the desert Southwest and to the Hopi lands and to a Hopi elder, and all of these things, the weaving. And there was a coming back to the land and embodiment with the land, but it was like horses were this carrier, this gateway. And you have no idea when this starts to open, what's going to happen. But part of what really occurred for me in this journey was this ability to trust the journey, and to trust the unknown, and to trust the unexpected, and also to open up to kinship with the community around me in those gatherings that ended up happening, because I came into the planet extremely empathic and open to the land and the spirits. My entire life, my relations with the unseen are fantastic. But humans have been a little trickier because we all get initiated. So I have, like everybody, some trust issues and some wounds from what went down, okay? Human. But what happened was that I was able to experience this level of compassion and presence and tenderness and curiosity and courage with the people around me as these mirrors in these transformational retreats. And also, this was when I was in training. I mean, you and I are both the teachers now. I mean, we'll always be in training to a certain degree, but there is a point where you become the teacher. And the teachers also were modeling these amazing things about how you weave people together and you meet the take aparts. But so it ended up, I would say, really, it was this whole, catalyzed by horses, then moving to a horse ranch in the middle of nowhere in Texas, that ended up opening this ability to receive community, to receive communion with other humans, and this sense of family and belonging. And then when that trust anchored in, there becomes, I think you use the same word, there becomes an alchemy in the container. There is an alchemy that happens when the people are showing up, because we need that. Some of this stuff is intimidating. And so when you have your community around you, and when you have your wise guides who know how to hold a container and to meet these deep experiences, there's a way that we're able to go beyond what we thought we could do. There's a way that we're able to be vulnerable and be tender, but also like claim our power. And so I just feel like there's all of the experiences that have happened through the transformational retreats that I've gone on myself in my own trainings, and then the ones that I've hosted myself. There is just this way that you come together and 1 + 1 = 5 million, or the group of 12 becomes this, like you said, this thing that affects the entire solar system in a way that we can't even imagine.
Yeah. And I feel that so often too, as we gather, it's like you feel the benevolent and well ancestor spirits, guides, like rings of an ancient oak tree, just all around surrounding us and just fiercely holding that container. And from the very beginning, when I started leading transformational retreats well over a decade ago, it was like that was the presence, that strength, that pillar of support is what allowed me to step in and say, oh, I can do this. Because you're not holding it alone. It's like the land is holding you, all the spirits are holding you, the alchemy of the container is holding you. There is this way that there is a guide, but that it becomes its own living, breathing being. There's this idea of the ancient alchemical egregore, which is this idea of when any more than 2 or more beings come together, that a third energetic is created when their energies are sealed together. And so it's almost this, magical alchemical container that everyone co-creates together with their presence, with their essence, with their spark, with their life force, with their soul essence. And in that, it creates this profound magic that, we can script to some degree, but we'll never know until we're in it and in the moment and present to what is unfolding. And the magic is always different. It's always ever unfolding and changing. And, it's just this way that it changes us at such a fundamental core level, because it reminds us of who we truly are. It's like we can't escape from the truth of our essence in transformational retreats. They're designed to help us turn in towards that even deeper. And so it's like we can't hide from ourselves there. Life is very distracting, right? And it's like things to numb us out and to help us lose focus. But the retreats focus us back in to that core central channel of alignment and attunement with self in community. And it's like we become this sovereign body pulsing together in this profound way.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. And you know what this was making me think of also as you were speaking and I was feeling into this, is there's also this piece, because there is this amazing peak experience in the retreat. That's absolutely part of it. But then there's also, what do you take back to your regular life? How do you reintegrate this? How have you changed so much? And how then do you have new skill sets? And also back to this community piece, there's this piece about people are starving for really authentic friendship, family, belonging, community, kinship, whatever tribe, whatever words we want to use. And so there's I have found for years, many of the retreats that I go to, I literally do it as a game where I will look around when I first show up. I always notice who I see right away, because usually they're some sort of a touchstone person. But I also, it's like dating, spiritual dating, without it, being sexual or romantic, but it's really powerful friendships are, it's love. It's totally love. And so I go to retreats to this day, and I look around and I'm like, who's sparkling? Like, who are my people? I also notice who I don't notice, because that's a whole nother thing. But I'm like, wow. And it's, so there's this way that you take home these skill sets, but there's also these ongoing relationships that you might not have met these people any other way. And so I love the way, I love to watch how people's lives change when they come back out. Like, for instance, part of having done this project, there were 70,000, yes, I said 70,000 ritualistic photos. This started in 05. So this was before the word selfie was in the lexicon. And you didn't have a smartphone either. So this was with cameras, but I was dancing with the camera and became one with the camera. Like, it's really this channeling of energy. And so when this process happened, and it really was centered in the second half of it was centered in the New Mexico desert. And New Mexico has a magic of its own. That's one of the biggest portals I've ever experienced. But there was this way, as you were talking about, this meeting of these allies and these initiators that are all around you, that are like, oh, you showed up. We want to support you. And it isn't always an AFGO. It isn't always another fucking growth opportunity in a bad way. Sometimes it's like another fucking growth opportunity. But what I've seen, I moved into years ago, this was again a decade and a half ago, initiating women back into themselves in the desert, in the New Mexico desert. And there is a sacred painting part of it, but there is this communion and this erotic, not sexual necessarily as much as sensual and connected to the land and the elements and all these things. But what I saw was happening with the women who were going through these processes was that you showed up with an intention, and then the issues that actually wanted to be addressed would be addressed that we might not even know. And then there was this anchoring in of this knowing that sent them in different directions when they came out. So it's like when you go into a transformational retreat, you get spun around, and then you might get shot out another door than you thought, but that other door was your door. And so the women who went through these, and I still do this work of the initiating the women in New Mexico desert, like one of the women thought, when I retire and I'm 70 or something, I'm going to move to New Mexico. It was her dream. She had a George O'Keeffe thing. And we worked together, did 3 transformational retreats total. She moved to New Mexico a year and a half after we did it. It was like game on. She'd like, why am I waiting till I'm 70? I mean, women have written their books. They've done their oracle decks. They've taken their businesses to another level. So part of this also is, I would say, for anybody who has this, I want to do it, I don't want to do it. It's like you're going to be positioned and shot out in a good way, invited into potentials you didn't even know were there. And it's pure magic. It's so amazing.
Agreed. Yay. And I'm so excited. I can't wait for our October Yoni Vision Quest retreats. There are still 2 spots left. I thought it was sold out, but then a new tiny home appeared on the property that was brand new for us to use. So I'm very excited about just being in that space again in person. We have almost 30 women, and it's just going to be this real moment and opportunity to go deep in and to be in the work together once again. So excited for that. And speaking of the Oracle of Initiation, I would love it if you'd be willing to pull a card. I'll pull one as well from the Sacred Revolution Oracle, Indie Deck Creator Sister. Just what we need to know around transformational retreats right now.
Interesting. Okay, so in the Oracle of Initiation, there's 8 different realms of arcing through a transformational arc, like a heroine sort of a journey of starting in innocence and going through the challenges and coming out with a level of power, and then taking it back to the collective as service. So this is midway through. This is the gateway of alliance. The gateways are like a major arcana card in the tarot. If you're a tarot person, it means this is a core archetypal issue. So anybody who's watching this communion card, this gateway of alliance, and that's down in a graffiti tunnel, tribally painted, ritualistically painted, which is part of the images in this deck. But my sense about this is, which is something that we have been saying this whole time, is about this is a re-communion with yourself, with the land, with your intuition and your instincts, and then with a community that you didn't even realize that you could have, like people that are winning the lotto. Because as spiritual beings, we people who watch your sort of stuff and do your stuff, do my stuff, we love to learn and we love to grow and we love these experiences and creativity. But also there is, I would say, I don't want a different word, but there's a reward of sorts, not like punishment reward like Christianity, but there is this, when you've done this critical mass of work and you have this enoughness in you where you can sparkle and shine shamelessly, there's a way that you can show up and be radiant, and the other people who are your people, they will see you, they will know you, and they will meet you, and then we're to play together. So to me, ultimately, communion means this merging between the worlds and co-creating and having this extraordinary experience that we came here to have. So I hope that made some sense.
Yeah, I love that. And I pulled 42, which is the Stellar Galactic Council of Luminaries. So this is the communion of support from the other realms. That there's this deeper invitation to really show up now, to honor the call. It's that deep level of support that is all around saying, we've got you, we are holding you, it is time. It's time to really step up. And so it just feels like such a powerful affirmation for our Revolutionary Retreats free event on Friday, because it really is about igniting your leadership potential. It is about equipping you with the tools to create transformational retreats that change lives, just as we've been talking about, and that really empower you to make a profound impact while also thriving financially, because it's actually really great business right now to be doing retreats as well. Statistically proven, in an uncertain economy, retreats are not only some of the most potent medicine we can do, but it's also financially sustainable. And so we would love to journey with you in this experience, beloveds. The link is going to be below, or it's at bit.ly/revolutionary retreats. And we would love to see you there. Thank you so much, beloved, for this conversation. A deep, deep joy to be with you today and to journey in this way and to hear even more about your transformational retreat experience, and just very excited to be in retreat space with you next week. In fact,
Yay.
so looking forward to that, beloved. And sending big, big love and gratitude your way.